Fighting back. Secret exposed. Victor goes too far. The Young and the Restless update for the week of February 16th to 20th reveals that Kane Ashby will fight back while Nate Hastings learns a secret and Nikki Newman has a bad feeling. Y&R suckers know that Kane lost control of Newman Enterprises thanks to Phyllis Summer's chloroform and a little Newman system hacking. Billy Abbott did his part by serving as a distraction as well. Nikki will want all the crucial players involved to face a downfall, so stay tuned for updates on any other revengeful news. As for Victor Newman, he may shock Kane by backing him into another corner. Victor could point out that he doesn't care who presently owns the Newman conglomerate. What Victor cares about is getting it back. That's why Victor may force Kane to get creative and avenge against Phyllis. However, Victor may advise that he'll have to outwit Phyllis and put the company in the right hands again, if Kane wants to see his family. Kane will indeed fight back against Phyllis in the coming occurrences, but he won't do it alone. Once Kane delivers an alliance plea to Daniel Romalotti Jr., it looks like Daniel will agree to help him since Lily Winter's still MIA along with the halves. It's not like Lily to be gone this long without responding to any textbooks or calls, so Nate and Devon Winters will grow decreasingly upset. Devon and Nate may ultimately suspect that Victor is involved in Lily's exposure. Although Lily is apparently in on Victor's plot, that doesn't mean she'll stay on board as time goes on. Lily and the halves could come true prison victims if Victor doesn't allow their freedom hot enough. Nate will also have a discussion with Victoria about her grand plan. Victoria will have a sneaky strategy to use against Billy and maybe Phyllis as well, so she'll let Nate in on the secret. Back with Nikki, she'll have a bad feeling about Victor and what's ahead. Victor has a tendency to go off the rails when he doesn't get what he wants, so Nikki will worry about what he'll be able of. Abby Winters will also feel the need to lay down the law with Mariah Copeland once she's out on bail. Dominic Winters won't be part of Mariah's life presently, so Abby will push her to understand that. While Sharon Newman gets some hints about Nick's medicine reliance, Claire Newman will formally again push Holden Novak to unmask the Los Angeles sap. Claire will remain determined to find out what Audra Charles is hiding, so she'll bargain with Holden and try to move him to come clean. The Young and the Restless spoilers say Claire will hope for a mutually salutary deal, but will Holden delve in? The week of February 16th to 20th on The Young and the Restless delivers the kind of high-stakes commercial warfare and emotional fallout that only The Young and the Restless can execute with razor-sharp intensity. Genoa City becomes a battleground where fidelity is tested, secrets hang to crump, and Victor Newman formally again proves that when he feels cornered, he doesn't just fight back, he scorches the earth. At the center of the storm stands Kane Ashby, a man who believed he could outthink both Phyllis Summers and Victor Newman, only to find himself stripped of Newman Enterprises in a humiliating chain of events touched off by chloroform, hacking, and precisely orchestrated distraction. The fallout is immediate and ruinous. Kane doesn't just lose a company, he loses influence, pride, and most importantly, the vision that he was ever truly in control. And if there's one thing Genoa City knows, it's that Victor Newman no way tolerates losing what belongs to him, indeed if it's temporarily in someone differentless hands. Kane's rage simmers beneath the face as he processes how completely he was played. Phyllis Summers executed her part faultlessly, using a blend of boldness and recklessness that only she could pull off. Meanwhile, Billy Abbott's advised distraction assured that Kane's defenses were down just long enough for the preemption to succeed. Kane understands now that he undervalued them both, and that consummation cuts deeper than the loss itself. But defeat isn't in his DNA. Rather of retreating, Kane begins recalibrating. However, Kane will give him commodity far more dangerous, strategy fueled by despair, if Victor wants creativity. Victor Newman, as always, remains 10 way ahead. Victor Newman doesn't care who presently sits in the superintendent-president at Newman Enterprises. Power, to him, is temporary unless it rests in his hands. He corners Kane with a proposition that feels less like advice and more like a trouble: get the company back, outsmart Phyllis, and restore order, or face consequences involving his family. The recrimination is clear. Victor doesn't need to raise his voice to ply power. His calm certainty is more nipping than any cried claim. Kane realizes that Victor isn't just demanding action. He's demanding evidence of fidelity. But there's a complication Victor may not completely anticipate: Lily Winter's mysterious exposure. Lily has been conspicuously absent, ignoring textbooks and calls in a way that alarms those closest to her. Lily Winters isn't someone who vanishes without explanation. Nate Hastings and Devon Winters both feel the growing weight of apprehension. The silence is unnatural. Devon, fiercely defensive, begins to suspect Victor's involvement. Nate, ever logical, weighs possibilities before reaching the same disquieting conclusion: this feels orchestrated. Unknown to them, Lily may have originally agreed to play along with one of Victor's layered schemes. But indeed, willing actors can come contributory damage when Victor's plans helical beyond containment. However, it's only a matter of time before moral lines blur and alliances fracture, if Lily and the halves are being used as influence. Victor's history proves that when he believes the end justifies the means, veritably many boundaries remain sacred. Kane, seeing occasion within chaos, approaches Daniel Romalotti Jr. with an alliance offer. Daniel Romalotti Jr. has his own reasons to begrudge the current power imbalance. With Lily missing and pressures raising, Daniel's fidelity is torn between emotional ties and realistic necessity. Kane frames the cooperation not as vengeance, but as restoration, a charge to correct injustice and reclaim stability. Daniel hesitates, apprehensive that partnering with Kane could enkindle farther retribution from Victor. Yet despair has a way of forging doubtful alliances. Eventually, Daniel agrees, fating that in Genoa City, survival frequently depends on choosing the lower of two pitfalls. Meanwhile, Nikki Newman senses the storm brewing before it completely breaks. Nikki Newman has lived through decades of Victor's grim juggernauts. She knows the warning signs: the tense jaw, the controlled silences, the calculated pauses. When Victor feels baffled, he doesn't simply respond. He escalates. Nikki's bad feeling intensifies as she contemplates what lengths he might go to in order to reclaim Newman Enterprises. She demands responsibility for everyone involved in the commercial sabotage, including Phyllis and Billy. Yet beneath her wrathfulness lies fear. She loves Victor, but she fears what he becomes when preoccupation overrides restraint. In another corner of Genoa City, Victoria Newman crafts her own strategic initiative. Victoria Newman confides in Nate Hastings about a plan designed to destabilize Billy and conceivably undermine Phyllis. Nate, conservative but intrigued, listens as Victoria outlines a subtle but effective counterattack. She understands commercial warfare as privately as her father does, though her styles tend to be more refined. Victoria's strategy hinges on exposure, using information at precisely the right moment to fracture alliances from within. Nate recognizes the brilliance but also the threat. Secrets, formally weaponized, infrequently remain controlled. Back on the particular front, Abby Winters takes her establishment stand against Mariah Copeland following her release on bail. Abby Winters makes it clear that Dominic's stability comes first. Mariah Copeland may hope for conciliation, but Abby refuses to blur boundaries. The emotional strain is palpable. Mariah's insulation deepens, and the distance between her and Dominic feels like a discipline that extends beyond legal consequences. Genoa City's legal battles infrequently remain confined to courtrooms. They transsude into living apartments and hearts. Away, Sharon Newman begins noticing disquieting signs in Nick's jest. Sharon Newman picks up on subtle changes, pressure, evasiveness, a reliance that raises alarm bells. Nick Newman skirmishes off Enterprises, but Sharon's suspicion has infrequently failed her. However, it threatens to fracture yet another Newman dynamic at a time when consanity is formally fragile, if drug reliance becomes a plot of its own. Claire Newman continues pressing Holden Novak for the verity about Audra Charles. Claire Newman refuses to accept half answers. She senses deception in the Los Angeles connection and believes Holden holds the missing piece. Holden Novak finds himself trapped between fidelity and tone preservation. Audra Charles has secrets concentrated within secrets, and exposing them could shift alliances permanently. Claire proposes a mutually salutary deal, translucency in exchange for protection. The question remains whether Holden will risk unraveling everything to satisfy her determination. As the week intensifies, Kane's counterpunch begins taking shape. He studies Phyllis' patterns, anticipating her coming move. He knows brute force won't work. Victor's warning echoes in his mind. To outsmart Phyllis requires tolerance and cerebral perfection. Phyllis thrives on chaos, so Kane decides to deny her that advantage. Rather of defying her intimately, he still dismantles her support systems, targeting vulnerabilities she didn't realize she exposed. Victor watches it all unfold with an admixture of desirousness and curiosity. However, Victor benefits if Kane succeeds. However, Victor reclaims control through other means if he fails. That's the genius of Victor Newman. He constructs scripts where he wins anyhow of outgrowth. Yet Nikki's fear lingers. She's seen palms that bring too much, however. If Kane's despair spirals into recklessness, if Victoria's secret plan detonates precociously, the collateral damage could fracture the Newman heritage beyond form, if Lily and the halves truly come pawns. By week's end, pressures crest but don't completely explode. Alliances harden. Dubitation deepens. Secrets hang on the point of exposure. Kane fights back with renewed focus. Nate grapples with knowledge that could change everything. Nikki braces for Victor's coming move. And Victor himself stands at the center of the storm he helped produce, unwavering in his belief that power isn't taken, it's reclaimed. In true youthful and the restless fashion, the battle for Newman Enterprises isn't just about business. It's about pride, family, fidelity, and the dangerous lengths people will go to cover what they believe is theirs. And as Victor edges near to going too far, Genoa City may soon discover that indeed legends can push their conglomerates to the point. As the chaos deepens in Genoa City, the fallout from the Newman Enterprises power snare refuses to settle into anything suggesting stability. On the young and the restless, every commercial initiative carries emotional collateral damage, and the week ahead transforms what began as a calculated takedown into commodity far more unpredictable, a cerebral chess match that threatens to consume everyone involved. Kane Ashby doesn't sleep. The sting of demotion renewals in his mind, the chloroform, the system breach, the look in Phyllis' eyes when she realized she'd won that round. For a man who has rebuilt himself innumerous times, losing Newman Enterprises feels like being intimately stripped of credibility. But beneath the bruised pride lies commodity sharper clarity. Kane begins mapping every move that led to his fall. He studies security logs, revisits exchanges, and re-examines alliances he formerly trusted. Patterns crop. He realizes that the real genius of Phyllis' strategy wasn't the hacking, it was timing. She knew exactly when he'd be detracted. She knew exactly which emotional buttons to push. Meanwhile, Phyllis Summers is riding the adrenaline high of Palm, but indeed she senses the quiet before the storm. Phyllis thrives on chaos, yet she understands Victor Newman better than utmost. You don't cheapen a Newman, especially not Victor, without consequences. She reassures herself that she has contingency plans, that Billy's involvement gives her influence, that Daniel's fidelity remains complete. Still, there's a flicker of apprehension she refuses to admit. Because if Victor retaliates, he won't do it impulsively. He'll do it surgically. Victor, for his part, maintains a nearly creepy calm. Victor Newman doesn't rant. He doesn't hang openly. Rather, he observes. He lets rumors circulate. He allows his adversaries to wonder whether his conniving commodity monumental or whether he's content to stay. But Nikki knows better. She watches him in the quiet moments, the way he gapes out the window of the estate house, the way his fritters tap against his office when no bone is looking. Victor isn't at peace. He's calculating. Nikki Newman confronts him one evening, her voice steady but laced with concern. She asks him directly whether Lily and the halves are truly safe. Victor's response is measured, nearly offended. He insists he'd no way harm a child. But Nikki isn't asking about physical detriment, she's asking about influence. She has seen Victor use emotional pressure ahead. She has watched him justify innocently Argentine opinions in the name of family. Her fear isn't that he's lost his humanity. It's that he believes he's justified in bending it. Across city, Devon Winters grows decreasingly agitated. Devon Winters refuses to accept Lily's silence as coexistence. He reviews her last given schedule, retraces way, and begins connecting blotches that point uncomfortably toward Victor. Nate tries to be the voice of reason, prompting tolerance, but indeed Nate Hastings cannot ignore the timeline. The exposure aligns too impeccably with Victor's reanimated aggression over Newman Enterprises. What Devon doesn't know is that Lily's involvement in Victor's broader strategy was originally voluntary. Lily Winters believed she could outthink both Kane and Victor by situating herself at the center of the chaos. She allowed. She was controlling the narrative. But Victor's games infrequently allow co-authors. As days pass without communication, Lily begins realizing she may have undervalued how tightly Victor controls his operations. She isn't physically locked, but she's insulated, cut off under the guise of security preventives. And insulation can feel like prison. Kane senses commodity is wrong long before evidence arrives. His exchanges with Daniel take on new urgency. Daniel Romalotti Jr. originally agreed to help out of fidelity and frustration, but when Kane reveals reservations about Lily's situation, Daniel hesitates. He loves his mama, Phyllis, but he also cares about Lily's safety. The alliance begins to fracture under moral pressure. Kane presses harder, averring that exposing Victor's manipulation is the only way to cover everyone. Daniel's internal conflict deepens, however. He risks alienating his mama. If he sides with Kane, however, he might be enabling commodity darker, if he remains pious to Phyllis. Meanwhile, Victoria Newman advances her quiet crusade. Victoria Newman understands that Billy Abbott's weakness has always been pride. Rather than defy him head-on, she begins subtly undermining his credibility in boardroom conversations. Anonymous leaks question his judgment. Fiscal judges raise enterprises that trace back to strategic whispers Victoria set in stir. She doesn't need to destroy him intimately, she only needs to erode trust. Nate observes her styles with admiration and caution. He knows Victoria learned from the stylish. But he also wonders whether she's getting too much like her father. Billy, unconscious at first, senses resistance structure. The confidence he displayed after helping Phyllis begins to falter. He confronts her, demanding consolation that they are still in control. Phyllis, ever recalcitrant, insists they anticipated counterreaction. Yet indeed she cannot ignore the tensing circle around them. Investors are skittish. Media narratives are shifting. And nearly in the murk, Victor remains silent, which is far more unsettling than open warfare. In the midst of commercial pressure, particular struggles consolidate. Sharon grows decreasingly terrified about Nick's drug reliance. Sharon Newman confronts Nick Newman gently at first, suggesting stress operation druthers. Nick skirmishes her off, claiming he has everything under control. But Sharon sees the signs, the subtle perversity, the reliance masked as necessity. With the Newman family under siege, Nick feels pressure to be strong. Admitting vulnerability feels like weakness. Sharon fears that if he continues denying the issue, it could helical into commodity far more destructive. Away, Abby stands firm in her boundaries with Mariah. Abby Winters makes it clear that Dominic's stability cannot be compromised. Mariah, devastated but trying to remain collected, promises she'll admire Abby's wishes. Mariah Copeland knows she must rebuild trust step by painful step. Yet the insulation weighs heavily. Watching Dominic from a distance feels like a discipline she cannot escape. The emotional strain threatens to push her toward reckless opinions that could complicate her legal standing indeed further. Claire Newman's disquisition into Audra's secrets accelerates. Claire Newman corners Holden Novak with substantiation suggesting deeper connections to Los Angeles dealings. Holden Novak tries deviation, but Claire's continuity is grim. She proposes a deal full translucency in exchange for protection from Victor's implicit wrath. Holden hesitates because he knows exposing Audra Charles could enkindle a disagreement. But he also realizes Claire may formally know more than she's revealing. The pressure between them simmers, part concession, part collective dubitation. As the week builds toward climax, Kane executes the first phase of his counterattack. Rather than defy Phyllis directly, he leaks substantiation intimating that her preemption may not have been entirely legal. He doesn't charge her outright. He plants seeds of mistrustfulness. Regulatory scrutiny increases. Questions arise about the timing of system breaches. Phyllis finds herself defending conduct she believed were watertight. The brilliance of Kane's move lies in its slyness. He isn't attacking her intimately. He's letting institutions do it for him. Victor observes Kane's strategy with narrowed eyes. He recognizes ambition when he sees it. Maybe Kane is eventually learning. But Victor also senses unpredictability. A hopeless supporter can come a liability. Nikki warns Victor that pushing Kane too far could boomerang. Victor dismisses the concern outwardly, yet intimately he considers contingencies. However, Victor may need a more direct approach if Kane fails. Devon eventually confronts Victor face to face. The blameworthiness is controlled but unmistakable. Devon demands to know where Lily is. Victor neither confirms nor denies involvement. He insists Lily is exactly where she needs to be. The nebulosity infuriates Devon. Nate latterly questions whether defying Victor was wise. Devon responds that silence would have been worse. Lines are being drawn, and impartiality is no longer an option. By week's end, multiple vestments suspend precariously. Kane's initiative has destabilized Phyllis' position, but not stumbled her. Victoria's subtle sabotage has begun weakening Billy's influence. Nikki's fears about Victor consolidate as his tolerance thins. Sharon prepares to carry a firmer intervention with Nick. Abby braces for emotional fallout with Mariah. Claire elevation closer to uncovering Audra's secret, while Holden stands at a crossroads. And at the center of it all stands Victor Newman, unwavering, redoubtable, and potentially on the verge of crossing a line indeed he may struggle to justify. Because in Genoa City, power isn't just about winning. It's about how important you're willing to immolate to reclaim what you believe is yours. As alliances fracture and secrets edge toward exposure, the question brewing over every character is the same when Victor goes too far. Who'll have the courage, or the power, to stop him?